Even as the world inches closer to finding viable COVID-19 vaccines like those from Pfizer and Moderna, it will take several years to recover from the pandemic, and the world will not be what we know it to be in the new normal.
This was stressed by Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong yesterday during a session on the future of global growth at a virtual event associated with the APEC grouping.
Well, PM Lee also spoke on the government's support for jobs and businesses to tide through this crisis and urged employers, regardless of what their plans are, to take care of their workers, citing them as stakeholders and an important resource.
We're happy to have NTUC's Assistant Secretary General Patrick Tay to share more. Hi Patrick. Patrick, so PM Lee said yesterday that employers to take care of their workers. His exact words, do not just make a short, quick decision. Retrain them if possible, redeploy them if possible. What's your advice for employers and employees in this difficult time, and how can they create a more robust, symbiotic working relationship, especially when government assistance ends?
I think it's important for employers and businesses to realize that it's a difficult period and also a sensitive period, particularly if the company or business is not doing well. I think the key is to be able to communicate this to the workers. I think it's very important. Communication, not just communication, but open, frank, honest communication. Communication of the outlook for the company, for the business, moving ahead. At the same time, also communicating with workers so that they are able to empathize the needs of workers and the various challenges that they face. Because now, besides COVID-19, we are also facing remote working, work from home, and other arrangements which will have exacting challenges on workers. So important, besides retraining, redeployment, to be sensitive, to do things fairly, responsibly, as well as sensitively, as is a difficult period of time.
What about on the employee side, Patrick? What can they do, to contribute to a more robust working relationship?
Yes, I think besides employers, employees and workers do play an important role. We know there's some downtime in some industries. We also know it's a time where we have to observe a lot of the safe distance and safe management measures. So I think important for workers and employees, particularly in the labour movement, we are working very closely with our tripartite partners, including our employers, to roll out some of these measures, and of course to make sure that we looking after the interests and welfare of workers. And particularly during this period, even prior to COVID-19, we had digital disruption, we were looking at industry transformation, and now with COVID-19 pandemic and all the work from home arrangements, and the entire pace of digitalization is accelerated. So it's important for workers at this point of time to look at where areas where they can reskill, upgrade, and upskill themselves, so that when the economy picks up, at the same time also as their jobs are transformed, they can segue nicely to all these new openings, as well as bigger roles and new roles.
Right. Well, on a separate topic, it was also reported yesterday that there was a significant spike in wrongful dismissal claims in the second quarter of this year, with 436 such claims lodged between April and June. So, Patrick, what are some of the most common examples of employees' complaints of being wrongfully dismissed?
The issue comes up when some of these contractual terminations are not carried out properly, i.e. it's not properly communicated. And of course, they may not have abide by some of the tripartite advisories, guidelines, including terms of the employment contract, or even in unionized companies and unionized environment, the collective agreements. So that's where the issues of wrongful dismissal might come up. For example, an employer, due to a business downturn, removes or contractually terminates an employee. And this employee, after leaving the job, thinking that it was contractual termination, then discovers that actually that position which he or she was terminated from is redundant, i.e. there wasn't a replacement, and it's actually more of a retrenchment than actually a contractual termination of sorts. So in that sense, the entire tripartite advisory on managing excess manpower and responsible retrenchments, and of course the best practices in this area of layoffs will set in and come in. And therefore, this may be a situation of a disguised retrenchment, for example.
Patrick, what recourse then can employees who feel they've been wrongly dismissed seek?
Yes. For wrongful dismissals, depending on whether you're a union member or in a unionized environment, vis-a-vis a non-union member and a non-unionized environment, you have various recourses. In traditional unionized and union member environments, we have a recourse through the Industrial Relations Act where we can file for wrongful dismissal action through the Ministry of Manpower. So if you have a problem and you are a union member in a unionized environment, please see your union leader, come to NTUC or seek your union's assistance. However, if you are not a union member or in a non-unionized environment, there's a tripartite alliance for disputes management. And pursuant to the changes to the Employment Act last year, the tripartite alliance for disputes management, TADAM for short, is able to hear issues regarding wrongful dismissal. So you can actually file a grievance with them so that they can hear your complaint.
Right. Well, Patrick, in the first half of this year, the Tripartite Alliance for Fair and Progressive Employment Practices investigated 260 cases of discriminatory hiring practices. So in cases like that, what help and assistance is available for those affected?
Yes, for those who face issues of discriminatory practices or have encountered them, whether it's hiring, recruitment, or even in the carrying out retrenchments, there's the Tripartite Alliance for Fair and Progressive Employment Practices, TAFEP for short. So they have a website, they have contact details, hotline as well, and emails. If you are affected or you have found yourself being a victim of this, you can actually file a grievance or complaint to them.
Right, thank you so much for making time for us, Patrick. We've been speaking to Patrick Tay, who's the Assistant Secretary General for NTUC.